Really interesting fight at lightweight, and this is one of those ones that gets me up in the morning. We were originally supposed to be having Drakkar Klose taking on Jai Herbert. Unfortunately, Herbert out of the fight. In steps Luis Pena on 10 days' notice. Matt, for Violent Bob Ross, it has been a rocky ride in the UFC, and this was a guy that you talked about, the Ultimate Fighter, earlier. He came in on TUF 27. He fought Richie Smullen in the finale, gets a win there, sends Richie over to Bellator. He loses a split decision to Mike Trizano, and that was one of those ones where, would they have fought anyway on the Ultimate Fighter? Well, we'll have them here in an impromptu Ultimate Fighter post-show, maybe? You want to call it that? He loses a split decision. I thought Trizano won that fight, but it is what it is. He would go on to beat Stephen Ocho Peterson, Matt Wyman. Ooh, Matt Wyman. Loses a split decision to Matt Frivola, beat Steve Garcia, who came in on short notice to replace Alex Munoz. And then he lost his last time out against Kama Worthy by guillotine. So, Luis Pena, he's been out for about a year and a half, about half a year. And, he gets this fight against Drakkar Klose, who is kind of good at everything, is he not?
Yeah, Drakkar Klose, nothing really stands out in his game, and I think because of that, people don't really understand just how good Klose is, because you look at some of his past opponents, and yes, he's never been ranked, but he's been in there with a lot of guys who have had numbers next to the names themselves. He's been in there with the Bobby Greens of the world, Lando Venata, someone who, of course, we all know because of his crazy fight with Ferguson. Been in there with the Christos Yagos of the world, the David Tamers, and the Beneil Dariush, of course.
And Southern Maine's Devin Powell.
There you go. So he's been in there with some of the best fighters in the world, and the thing for Drakkar Klose is, even in his losses, he does have these really great moments. And the Tamer fight was weird, because Tamer, who does fight a little bit similar to Luis Pena, and there's a bit of a theme with Drakkar Klose, but he just has a really hard time with opponents who can move a lot or who can out-grapple him. Because for Klose, he's a bit of a wrestle boxer, but he's much more striking-oriented than he is wrestling-oriented. And Klose, another great comp for him, another guy in the weight division, is Alexander Hernandez. They fight in a somewhat similar manner. I would say Hernandez, he's a little bit more athletic than Klose, but just when you look at the overall sort of totality of their games, very similar. But Klose, he's beaten better guys than Luis Pena, but again, he does struggle with those long, more dynamic strikers who can throw a lot at him. You look at some of his wins, he beat Mark Jacasey, but that was a really weird fight because Jacasey pieces him up, and then he kind of breaks his own foot, and they just have this weird last 2 rounds. But anyways, Drakkar Klose beats him, fights a little bit similar to Pena. He fights Tamer, who's similar to Pena. He fights Yagos, similar to Pena. There's just been a lot of guys who he's fought who do throw a lot of, weird spinning techniques who are very explosive strikers. And he has beaten some of them, but he's lost to some of them as well. So for me, I think Drakkar Klose has a much higher ceiling than Luis Pena. I think he should beat Luis Pena, but I can tell you that there is something about Luis Pena's style that will give Drakkar Klose a few issues in this fight.
And the thing, too, Drakkar Klose is great with your average fighter. And, I say that because if you have somebody that throws decent output, has decent power, Drakkar Klose can normally go strike for strike. He can usually out-wrestle most of his opponents. His grappling's not too bad. But as soon as you throw in a weird wrinkle, he usually struggles. I mean, you look at the Christos Yagos fight. What's Christos Yagos' biggest problem? That almost got him in trouble against Carlton Minus. His cardio's not the best, and so Drakkar Klose does have pretty good cardio. He wins out there. He fights Beneil Dariush, and they go strike for strike. Well, Beneil Dariush has beaten CDF twice now. Beneil Dariush, very good fighter. Drakkar Klose got put on a poster. So we haven't seen Drakkar Klose in almost a year. Again, he was supposed to take on Jai Herbert that kind of fights like Luis Pena. He's a long guy who can submit you. And again, if you look at Luis Pena and his overall totality of work, he had a very extensive amateur career. He went 8-2 as an amateur, but as a pro, with all of his wins, 4 by submission, 2 by knockout. For Drakkar Klose, if you look at the line his way, he's got 11 total wins, 4 by knockout, 7 by decision. So you would think if Drakkar Klose is going to go into this fight with Luis Pena, he just has to avoid some of those unorthodox strikes from Luis Pena. He's got to avoid some of those weird grappling exchanges with Luis Pena. Because if Luis Pena gets one of your arms, he could get it all wrinkled up in a strange position. It's like a weird string in a sweater. It's like that weird lace in your shoe that as soon as you cut it at phrase, Luis Pena's going to grab that. He's going to take a match and then put it through that hole. What do you think about that?
That was a lot. I'm not going to lie, Craig. Okay. Drakkar Klose, I gotta be surprised, and we talk about this in the opposite way, but Drakkar Klose should be a much bigger favorite than he is already in this fight, and we normally say it the opposite, oh wow, the odds should be a lot closer. Luis Pena, although I'm a big fan of him, I like the nickname, I like his whole shtick and everything, and I gotta be honest, I sort of undervalued the career of Drakkar Klose. I think Klose is a much better fighter than Luis Pena. He's a much more experienced fighter. He's a much more well-rounded fighter. And other than some of the unorthodox techniques of Luis Pena, I don't really know what he does that's going to give Klose problems. He does have unorthodox striking, but Pena needs range to get all those attacks off. And Drakkar Klose is a very suffocating fighter who he won't wrestle constantly, but he is always in a range where he can either wrestle you or box you. And he's not going to allow you that space to get off your, lunging punches, any of your long-range kicks and whatnot. So for Klose, I just think if you fight the classic Drakkar Klose, don't make this fight crazy exciting or anything. Use your wrestling when you need it. Use your boxing when you need it. Hold him up against the cage when you need it. Just don't do anything crazy, and I don't see how Drakkar Klose loses this fight, if I'm being completely honest. For Klose, he has the higher ceiling out of these two. I know people talk about Pena like he is this next really propped up prospect, but personally, and I'm a fan, he hasn't showed me anything that tells me, oh, Pena is going to be a top 15 guy one day. Not that Drakkar Klose is a top 15 lightweight, but I do see him as one of those classic 25 to 15 guys who, if you do want to get into the top 15, eventually you have to beat Drakkar Klose, and I don't know if Pena's at that stage in his career just yet to beat a guy like Klose.
Coming off a loss, and the thing for Luis Pena, he was always skipping around gyms. I mean, he was all over the place. He's AK at one point. He's been at ATT
Has he been to Brunswick, Maine?
Well, he's been at ATT for a while now, so we'll see how that's been paying dividends for him. But again, coming off a loss, you look at the win before that, Steve Garcia, who came in on short notice and really just got out-wrestled by Luis Pena, and Pena had his back for most of the fight. And then he lost a split decision to Matt Frivola, who's a good wrestler in his own right. So for me, you look at the Tapology votes, 664 of them. Again, this fight came in on short notice, 78% close, 83% by decision. If you look at the odds, Klose open to -135. He's now -207 on best fight odds. Pena open to +115 or 135 rather. He is now at +170. So yeah, +115 to +170. So Klose is the favorite. The fans are going with Klose. And again, I think if he can make this fight short, if he can get in close, but it's true. If he can get in close, push the pace, and especially in a smaller cage, getting ready for a full fight camp against Jai Herbert, who's somewhat of a similar opponent to Luis Pena, I think that definitely helps him out in this one. But hey, maybe Luis Pena, no pressure, nothing to lose, like that old Billy Talent song. He goes in there and mops the floor with Drakkar Klose, and then we're talking about Luis Pena again. But I'm going with Klose. You're going with Klose. I'm looking forward to this fight, though. It should be a good one. We got a great card coming up. I mean, Nassourdine Imavov's fighting Phil Hawes finally. There's all sorts of great things to look forward to. So keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt. As we always say, let's get into it.